Have you ever gone to a restaurant and the food on the menu looked absolutely delectable, but once ordered and on your plate, the taste betrayed its image? Though eating it will nourish you, the flavor and the lack of flavor causes a negative review of this dish. Such is the case concerning many that are saved. The flavoring, the attitude needs to be adjusted. I want to talk about being the salt of the earth. For some reason, for years when we heard and we hear topics like this, we automatically assess that all believers are the salt of the earth. It is really imperative that you understand what Jesus was saying when he spoke to his disciples in what is called the similitudes. This portion of scripture here in St. Matthew 5:13 through 16 is called similitude. The reason for it is because similitude means to be like, or to be comparative. In other words, Jesus was giving them instructions as to what they needed to know in order to be like him. Yes, in order to be like me and to be productive, it is important that you hear these things and adhere to them. Well, there's a lot of us that hear, but we're not adhering. Yes. It is imperative that you understand what Jesus was speaking about when he talked about the salt of the earth. The first thing you've got to understand is that though we are believers, there are many of us that are saved. Yes, we have accepted Christ, but for some reason or the other, we have lost our zeal. We have lost our attitude concerning those things that are magnetic or that are drawing to the unbeliever. To be saved is one thing. To be saved benefits you, but to be the salt of the earth benefits those that are around you. Is it possible then to be saved and to not be salty? Yes, because there are many that are saved, but they have no saltiness. Yes, you've got to understand that Jesus was very wise when he used the term salt. You've got to understand that salt in that day was very significant. It was used in every sacrifice. Salt was relative because it maintained flavor, and it also preserved the food. You can find now even ham. They'll take ham and they'll salty it and they'll cure it, and it can last for years even. Salt preserves. But when salt is exposed to the elements, it loses its flavoring. Yeah. You understand, when it snows, you'll find that they take salt and they'll put it on the driveway because then it will inhibit one from slipping. That salt is useless to consumption. Its only purpose is to be trodden under the feet of men. Jesus was careful now because he wanted his disciples, who he had been instructing the whole 36 months, 3 years, that he was governing them as their master, to be like me. Understand, Jesus pulled out 12 men that were obscure, 12 men that nobody knew anything about, really did not care anything about them. Peter was who he was. He was a fisherman by trade, but he was ignorant as it related to education. And then you had Matthew, who was a tax collector, who nobody liked if they did know him, because he was really bringing oppression to his own own people. Yes. Then you had James and John, who were two little rich boys, who were the sons of Zebedee and Salome. Who cares? But when Jesus comes into your life, obscurity becomes now visuality. Jesus wanted them to know now, though you feel you are nothing, because I am in your life, all eyes are going to be on you. Let me see if I can help you with that. Nobody was messing with you until you told them that you were saved, till you started going to church, till you started changing your attitude about things. Then your obscurity became front row and center. All of a sudden, nobody had anything to say. As long as you were going out to the club, long as you were doing what you did, nobody said a word. But as soon as you connected with Jesus, tell somebody, I got the real hookup. As soon as you got the real hookup, the right hookup, then everybody had something to say. Now everybody in the family knows who you are. Folks didn't know your number till you came into Christ. Folks act like they didn't know where you lived until you came into salvation. Now all of a sudden the obscurity has left, and now you are the star. A star is born, and now these that have fought against you, those that felt that you were not qualified to do what you say you've been called to do, have grown increasingly. Seem like the weight and the enemies connected to the weight has literally metastasized like a cancer. Where were you when I was trying to buy 40 and didn't have enough money? You didn't say nothing about that. Where were you when I didn't have enough money to get my nickel bag? Y'all don't want to help me. But now when you see me walking out of my house on my way to church, you got something to say. You know why? Because you know I'm salty. And what you got to understand is the world, if you're not careful, will cause you to lose your saltiness. I told you in the premise of my message that pure salt that is exposed to the elements, that it loses its virility. Look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, that's why you got to be careful who you're dealing with when you are saved. When you become saved, you got to be more cautious then than you've ever been before. That S doesn't mean Superman, Superwoman. It means salvation. But for some reason, we feel like we can combat every demonic force. We have strength that we ain't never had before. And the truth is, it is then that you actually become more physically vulnerable, though you are becoming more spiritually stronger. I wish I had somebody in here. Yes, for salvation is almost like kryptonite to the flesh. The flesh cannot handle what's happening in your spirit. The transformation is blowing its mind, and so therefore it draws into its life those that would discourage you. And you got to understand why the enemy will send these proponents to discourage you, so that you're purposeless. Oh, look at somebody and tell them, I don't know what's worse, being a sinner or being a saint with no purpose. I wish I had somebody in this place. At least when I was a sinner, I knew my purpose. My purpose was to destroy my life and go to hell. But as a believer, I done got so caught up with folks until now I don't even know my purpose. We're living our lives through other people's lives and missing out what God has deemed necessary for your own assignment. Look at your neighbor and tell them, say, neighbor, salt. And so understand that Jesus is speaking speaking to his disciples. He is speaking to them about being the salt of the earth. Christ is obviously using symbolic language in his description of the believer, just like he had so many times before. As a matter of fact, he was notorious for using aspects of everyday living to teach important truths about God. The believer is like the salt of the earth. Earth salt is impure salt, commonly used in his day, that it could be used for flavoring and preserving. Since earth salt is impure, the sodium chloride could come out of it and leave behind simply limestone powder that had no taste and thus had no use. Do believers understand the context of what Christ is saying? Once the salt of the earth has lost the sodium chloride compound, it's failed now to be of any use. And the normal person in that day, even trying, could not introduce the sodium chloride back into the earth salt. So Christ is stating that once it has lost its saltiness, which is the sodium chloride, it cannot regain its saltiness. The listeners would have understood this easily. It is quite possible that they would have to throw away the earth salt after a time, because it would not even be useful in the household anymore. An interesting note is also to understand that the word losing its saltiness means to become foolish or to become nonsensical. Losing saltiness has a negative connotation in the other translations of the verb. Understand that the only real use that this salt, after losing its flavor, has is the use of limestone substance, left to be thrown down and to be walked upon. Is there anybody that feels like the only thing they're good for is for folks to walk over them? If you're feeling that way, it's because you've lost your saltiness. What do you mean, lost my saltiness? In other words, you've been exposed to too much. You've been connected to stuff that's not preserving you. You help me, Lord. Have you ever gone to a Chinese restaurant? This is very peculiar. I've seen this only in these Oriental restaurants. In the salt container, or the salt bottle, if you will, they put rice there. For the rice helps the salt to maintain the sodium chloride. You got to understand that when you are God's elect, tell somebody, yeah, I'm God's elect. What does that mean? God chose me. Elect means election. It means God chose me. Many are called, but few are chosen. Tell somebody, I'm part of the chosen crew. And because you are the elect of God, you've got to be careful now where you allow yourself to be, because there are those, if they would desire, would do all that they could to destroy your place and your substance in God. Yes, you have to understand that we're living in an hour now where the world does not know the difference between the church and itself, because we have lost our flavor. There was a time you could note who a believer was just by looking at him. Lord, help me. Now you don't know who the believer is, because they talking just like the unbeliever. They acting just like the unbeliever. Their attitude is just like the unbeliever. We had a different taste. Look at somebody and tell them a different taste. The mothers of the church were sweet. The pastors had love. Y'all don't want to talk to me in here. And you could see the hand of God on their life. What happens now, my dear sisters and brothers and all here, is that Jesus is having a conversation with his sons regarding their nature and how it must become. Though you seem to be nobody, because you are connected to me, folks are going to make a big deal out of every little thing you do. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden, folks get real sensitive around you. You can't say nothing. Yeah. Everybody carrying their feelings on their sleeve. Oh, y'all not helping me in here. You got to understand, it's not personal. Come on, turn to somebody and tell them, understand, it ain't personal. It ain't because you're light skinned. It ain't because you're dark skinned. It ain't because you're short. It ain't because you're tall. It's because God has chosen you. Yes, that's why the battle is great. Even now amongst those that you love, you're going to find that those that you love will test your patience. And if you're not careful, you're going to lose your saltiness.